Apple's 10 billion podcast downloads in 2016, Stitcher Premium and Facebook Live Audio.
Welcome to the Richard Daly Podcast, bringing you a UK perspective on the latest news and developments from the world of podcasting and internet radio.
Welcome to episode 21. I'm your host, Richard Daly. Each week I curate and discuss the latest news in podcasting and internet radio with a focus on the smaller podcaster, radio host and DJ. So let's start this week with a Rain News piece which reports that Apple saw 10 billion podcast downloads and streams during 2016. As part of its review of 2016, Apple shared that listeners consumed more than 10 billion downloads and streams of podcasts worldwide over the course of 2016. So as we know that the Apple Podcast app is responsible for about 65% of podcast listening, we can get some rough estimates from that as to the total size of podcasting. In terms of the number of downloads from Apple, they actually don't share any individual figures, but do report that NPR's Fresh Air podcast was the most downloaded show of the past 12 months. Rethinking how to make radio. James Cridland writes about a talk given recently by Dave Walters. Walters works for the BBC as head of product systems and services in their design and engineering division. The BBC is looking at how it makes radio, and it's investigating what technology changes might make possible in the future. What they're aiming to do, I guess, is to capture everything that happens in the studio. So this means recording as many settings as possible, things such as fader positions, in real time, as well as all the individual audio inputs, rather than just a single finished audio track. Recording each item separately like this, along with the associated metadata, means that they're creating audio objects in real time as the program's being made. These objects can then be reassembled into clips or segments as required. Walters explains that the studio user should not notice anything different. The mixing desk experience shouldn't change, but effectively this adds a multi-track audio editor, automatically recording every audio component and every fade and gain level change. This means, of course, that an editor could go back and fix a bad fade, cleanly edit a voiceover, or even produce a different version of a live program for different platforms. Now, the BBC is currently testing this concept with a pilot Internet Fit Studio, so hopefully we'll see more of this in 2017. Personally, I would love to have a version of this for use in my own personal studio. Stitcher launches Stitcher Premium subscription service. Podcast syndication platform Stitcher has announced that it's launching a new premium paid subscription version of its service. Stitcher Premium is going to replace Stitcher's previous premium service, Stitcher Plus, and will give podcast listeners ad-free listening, bonus episodes, Stitcher Originals, that's over 40 exclusive shows created and produced by Stitcher themselves, and more than 120 comedy albums from comedians such as Louis C.K. Stitcher Premium is going to be priced at $4.99 per month, or $35 a year, and the new service is also going to replace Midroll's Howl app later this year, I understand. Stitcher has said that podcasters who are currently listed with Stitcher can ask to be included in Stitcher Premium by contacting them directly. Though I have to say it's not clear what benefits podcasters will get themselves just at the moment. Podcast commentator Nick Quah has been writing his roundup of 2016 and his thoughts on what's likely to happen in the space in 2017. One of his key points is that there is likely to be a growing gap between the professional broadcasters and the independent podcasting community. Now, Nick focuses on the professional agency and advertising side of podcasting in his research and writing, which is fair enough. He has said that that's what interests him. Nick sees that podcasting is going to get more formalised within the professional layer, and that the expected advertising growth will benefit that layer and will not be spread down to the independent community. Now, he believes that this is going to lead to the independent community being pressured into organising itself more. He doesn't really discuss how that might happen, and personally I can't see it being a top priority for most independent podcasters. Nick has come in for some criticism from independent podcasters and companies working more in that space, but I think that just shows that Nick is right that 2017 is likely to see a growing split between the, in quotes, two sides, especially if pressure is brought to bear by some of the bigger players to gain more control of podcasting platforms in their desire for better statistics, most of course which are primarily wanted to sell advertising. I do think there are some things in play that will help the independent podcast in 2017. I'm certain podcast discovery is going to become easier. Devices like Amazon Echo and Google Home will make podcasts more accessible, and I think that a growing acceptance of shorter form content by podcasters will increase listening appeal. Now, I've always aimed for this podcast to be around 10 minutes in length, okay? Sometimes it's a little shorter or a little longer, but personally I find I'm more likely to listen consistently to shorter podcast episodes. Facebook is introducing an audio-only version of its Facebook Live feature. Believe it or not, it's called Facebook Live Audio. Following feedback from their users, Facebook has realised that sometimes publishers want to tell a story on Facebook with just words and not video. It will also be a useful option when someone's internet signal is too weak to support video. And that's true that some people have already been finding creative ways to go live on Facebook and reach audiences with audio only by adding a still image to accompany their audio broadcast. The new live audio option will make it easier to go live with audio only when that's the broadcaster's preferred format. But the killer benefit of this new functionality is that listeners to live audio broadcasts are going to be able to continue listening without having to remain on the post, as is the case currently with Facebook Live video. For now, at least, people using Android devices will be able to continue listening to a live audio broadcast even if they leave the Facebook app or lock their phones. iOS listeners will be able to continue listening as they browse other parts of Facebook. I guess that will change over time as well. Facebook are currently testing live audio with some of their bigger media partners, but it should become available to everyone early in 2017. I thought is whether there's an opportunity to use this feature to record a podcast live and then take the audio to your usual podcast host for publishing to other platforms. Of course, that means you're going to have to record it yourself at the moment because there is no native functionality for recording within Facebook. Certainly, this might help discoverability. The notification feature to your followers and the instant feedback provided by user comments could be invaluable to podcasters. I publish recordings of this podcast to my Facebook page as a native Facebook video using the lip sync functionality for this and using the show artwork as a static image. Now, I have to say this gets little traction currently, with lots of likes but few views. I do worry whether broadcasting live would end up being the same. I can see it being a lot of work to build an actual listening audience on Facebook, but I do think it could work for shorter form podcasts like this one. So I will give it a try, I think. A great find by James Quidland in his newsletter this week now, how to air check your podcast. Now, if you don't have a radio background, you might not have heard of air checking, but basically it's a way for radio DJs to get constructive feedback on their performance. The DJ will sit down with their program director or radio coach and listen to a recording of a recent show together. The director or coach then offers insights into what the on-air personality is doing well and what they could do to improve. Now, of course, most podcasters don't have access to a program director or coach to help them critique their shows, which does make it hard for them to get useful feedback. The suggestion here is to use an Amazon service called Mechanical Turk. Now, this service can be used to hire workers to perform minor tasks for a small amount of money. The concept is for the podcaster to pay people to listen to the first few minutes of your podcast and give you, say, 300 words of feedback. The people offering feedback obviously won't have the experience of a program director, but they should be able to give you some useful insights. The practice is similar to how movie studios use test screenings. I'll put a link in the show notes at richarddally.com/21 where you can read the source article and also watch a video showing how to set up this kind of air check review of your show using Mechanical Turk. Okay, so that's all the news from the Richard Daly podcast for this week. If you visit my website at richarddally.com, you'll find all my social media links as well as the various ways you can subscribe to the show. The show notes for this episode are at richarddally.com/21. As usual, please send me your questions or comments, and if there is a topic you'd like me to cover, then you can tweet me. Thank you for listening, and I will see you on the next episode.